Yeah, we're back. Most sporadic podcast schedule in the history of the world, but we are back, all three of us, able to do it tonight. Judge Dan, just going with a very casual Dan. Justin Watkins, very casual as well. Cofield, as I'm live here from the club at beautiful Allegiant Stadium. I do have to mention a football note real quick because I haven't got a chance to do this on the air. I went to SoFi last week. Oh boy,
A lot better, right?
wow. As Adam Hill would say, well, they spent three times the money. It's there's no comparison. They're just different stadiums. They're just different types of stadiums. But yeah, SoFi is crazy. And I will say that my favorite feature of SoFi is that they built it in a neighborhood, Dan, in Inglewood, and like the neighborhood is still there. Like it's getting gentrified, but it's a full blown neighborhood, and there's a liquor store right across the street. I binge drank as much as I could before I went in, and then I may have thrown down like a small edible. And my girlfriend was just asking me, she's like, "Hey, can I see your phone to see what pictures you took?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't take anything. I nothing." And then she gives it back to me. I look, I'm like, "Holy crap! I took like 55 pictures. Zero recollection of it.
Yeah.
None." So
You would have loved this because Steve actually would have been freaking out. I went to a conference. It was a 4-day conference. It was at the Palm Beach Convention Center. Now, Florida, of course, is like the governor is like, no mandates, whatever you want. But Palm Beach, the county of Palm Beach is like, well, that may be fine. But if you want to use our convention center, you're going to wear your damn masks,
oh, really?
right? That's our policy. All 10,000 people in unison. It was a thing of beauty. People coming together as one in unison at the same time said, F you, we ain't wearing it. As soon as the doors opened, it was a kumbaya moment. Now, nobody wore masks. They're like, we're not wearing masks for 60 hours over 4 days. Screw you. No masks. And the security guards were like, it's like we talked about with Watkins and, people quitting their jobs and like, it ain't worth it. We ain't, there's X amount of us. There's 10,000 of them. It ain't going to happen. And finally, the event organizers are like, you know, it's personal choice. Do what you got to do. And so there were no masks. And then, but I did notice on the kind of the event page, there was like at least we're starting to see these posts trickling in, like, hey, I tested positive for COVID today. So there's at least 3 I saw. But as the thing started, I said to my wife, because we've talked about on this podcast, I said, now we happen to be in her enrollment period for the benefits right now for her employer. I said, honey, I'm good because I've got the I'm double vaxxed. I got the Regeneron, that President Trump said was a cure, basically. And now I got the natural immunity from like a month ago. So I'm good, honey. I'm going to make it through this alive. I'm sure you're going to be okay. But if you're not, it's the enrollment period. You might want to log on and bump up the old life insurance. I'm just saying it. So just in case.
Harsh humor. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
What you described is my experience at every single Golden Knights game right now, which is you have to wear a mask. As soon as they get down to get their seats, everybody in unison is like off and like double checking. Hey, come on, we're all taking these off. Everybody off in here. Yep. And then once a period, this poor lady, it's the same lady every time in my section, walks down with a mask up sign. She walks down, looks at both sides, 1,000 people with no mask on, turns around, stands at the bottom, shows the sign, and walks right back up without saying a single word to anybody. Yeah. It's just, I mean, like we said, was that a $750 an hour job? Ain't
not
worth it.
Yep. No, and then I talked about this on the air today and a couple of times. Like at SoFi was fully vaccinated, and you're supposed to have your mask on. And I whenever someone's sitting right next to me that I didn't know, I put it on. They left after 15 minutes, so I had it on and off. At this point, they can't police it. They can barely check the vax card coming in. Like I had I had one. I have my card uploaded on 2 different apps, and I had a QR code, and I was like, "Here you go." And the lady's just like, "Yeah, you're good." She's like, she didn't even have the friggin' QR code scanner. So she can't tell us. You don't know who's coming in, who's not, who's fake, who's not. That's why Dan, you don't know this, but we have all different rules at all our venues. For the hockey games, T-Mobile in general, you don't have to be vaxxed, but you're supposed to be masked up, right? Fully vaxxed at the Raiders games, but you don't have to wear a mask. Fully vaxxed at the Thomas and Mack for UNLV games, but you don't have to wear a mask there. And then what am I missing? Oh, then at Allegiant for UNLV football games, you can be anything, but you're supposed to wear a mask. But they can't police it at any of them. And frankly, and UNLV people know I've said this. Like I think the Thomas and Mack made a mistake because they don't have great attendance as it is for the UNLV basketball games, and now it's been cut in half. So I don't know what they're supposed to do. But I will say this to people who complain about like the UNLV situation about having to be fully vaxxed. I see just as many people piss and moan about going to the VGK games where no one's wearing a mask. So you can't win no matter where you go. Someone will complain.
Well,
Yeah.
It was funny about this event because there was a lady that was like, because of the pre-event, messaging, she was like, well, if anybody wants a hotel, because there's a hotel right next to the convention center, I'm going to release my room. I'm canceling. They can't force us to do this. And it's like, well, one, they're actually not forcing you because you made a choice. You're not going. And then two, the joke's on you. Oh, you know what? She was objecting because they did do the Clear app or whatever. Yeah, we all had to either one, show a negative test or show you were vaccinated. She's like, but they can't force us. And it's like, honey, that's the way this country works. They didn't force you. You made a choice. You chose not to go to that event. And you're bitter about it because that's the way freedom works. Freedom doesn't mean you get anything and everything you want all the time, 100%, or you throw a tantrum. It means you get to make choices. And you're choosing not to partake in this particular thing because that's the way you want it and you're bitter. But you made your choice. That was the freedom you chose to exercise. And guess what? Everybody showed up and nobody wore their masks. And, now some people are coming down with COVID. But you know what? They're all really positive about it, and they don't care.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's America. And this lady's home in.
I got it by choice.
Yeah, exactly. That was their choice. So
I just got back from Costa Rica, and I have to say, all the clunkiness that we're talking about enforcement, all this stuff. I flew United down there, super good. Like they had, the travel document center that you had to upload some stuff. You had to, there's different rules literally changed in the middle of my stay for entrance back into the United States. They were right on top of it. You upload your Vax card, and it changes the number of days for a negative test. You still need a negative test to get back in. But it was interesting because in Costa Rica, it's mandated vaccinations for everybody, right? But it's also mandated masks all times. Indoors, outdoors, doesn't matter.
Really.
And so when I got there, one of the ladies at the house we're staying at, she comes in to talk to me, and I don't have my mask on, and so I'm like, oh, let me grab my mask, and she's like, it's okay, we're all vaccinated, it's mandatory vax, and I'm like, oh, I'm vaccinated too, so you can take your mask off. She's like, yeah, but we have to keep our masks on all the time, and I'm like, why do they do that? And it's to your point, Steve. Is like 80% of our industry is tourism,
Right.
and the only way we can keep everybody happy is that basically you don't have to wear a mask because we're all vaccinated and we're all safe.
Right.
But we have to wear a mask so that if you're not, you feel safe, or if you're a big mask enforcer. So they're just running around all day long, indoors and outdoors, wearing masks, even though they're fully vaccinated, just to play both sides of the fence as best they can so they become a good tourist destination. I'm like, well, you guys are welcome to take it off anytime you're around us over here.
Right,
but tough spot. But I had a great time.
Speaking of your travel, I for that Chargers game I went to, it was Chargers and Vikings at SoFi. On the way back from LAX, man, the gate agent was like freaking hardcore about the mask. I mean, I would say an announcement every 20 minutes, and it included if you're eating or drinking, eat or take a sip and put the mask back on. And meanwhile, I'm watching, and like I was waiting for someone to go up because our flight was delayed by 2 hours, but you found out about it every 10 minutes that it was being pushed back 10 minutes. I was waiting for someone to be like, how about you just get the plane here so we can leave? Like, I understand she can't control any of that, and she was just the messenger. But can I give you a real quick story about business and dealing with customers in the airline industry? And I guess they feel like they have us over a barrel to say whatever they want, do whatever they want. For some reason, the pilot comes on as we're getting ready to land, and the guy makes a point and goes, well, we're getting set to land at Patrick McCarran Airport. And I was like, why the fuck did he just mention that? Like, is this guy seriously like trying to plant a flag on the renaming of the goddamn airport while he's flying the plane?
I don't get it. What's the problem? Like, what's the deal?
We renamed the airport Harry Reid International because, as it turns out, Patrick McCarran, who died in 1954, like many people, had an awful history when it came to race, and he was a massive anti-Semite. So I was like, dude, for the pilot, like, shut up.
Yeah, that's the hill to die on, is like, hey, we're going to keep our history of good anti-Semites having the names attached to airports.
Well, I mean, that guy's begging to get he's begging to lose his job. I mean, that's what he's doing.
But he could stand. I mean, he could always stand, I guess, defended by, I didn't realize. But I was like, wow, I've never heard Senator Patrick McCarran I've never heard anyone do that. But this guy just happens to slip into. I'm like, what are you doing?
But on a side note,
to be fired by like your guy Rolovich right now.
Oh, are you wanting to read the apology now, or are we going to wait till the end?
No, sir. It's exactly on point with what I said, which was
it's 100% not on point.
No. Which I said, if his challenge is to whether or not the law is enforceable or not, he's going to lose. But I don't know what process they put in place. And if they F that up, then that's the only way they expose themselves. Now, here's what happened. They told everybody we have this double-blind system.
Steve, you got the tape?
He heard me say this 3 different times. Every time I said, I don't know what process they put in place, but that's the key, right? And they published, we have a double-blind system. They review it. After it's reviewed, they don't know who the person is, and they make the recommendation on the exemption. And once that's done, that gets sent up to their supervisor, and they can be appealed after that. And so in this case, what happened is, in the double-blind system, they say, yep, we think he should get the exemption, notified the athletic director. And this is where it gets interesting. I don't think it's a slam dunk. I think you're right that it's an invitation to a lawsuit, but I don't think it's a slam dunk he wins this. And what the athletic director said is, wait a minute, you're giving him an exemption based on a sincerely held religious belief, and I have a whole bunch of information that tells you that it is not sincerely held. That he told me that he didn't want to do it for a whole bunch of other reasons. And after I told him those reasons aren't good enough, that then all of a sudden he started talking about faith. And so if that's true, and if that testimony is true, and he testify under oath to it, then okay, yeah, can Rolovich bring a lawsuit? Well, anybody can sue anybody at any time. But ultimately, whether or not they clunked up their own process doesn't change the fact that the law is appropriate. The enforcement of the law may not have gone the right way, but at the end of the day, the athletic director is going to get up there and be like, hey, I feel like it's my obligation as a state employee to enforce the law and the mandate that was given to me. And I know that guy's lying about not wanting to be vaccinated because of a sincerely held religious belief. I know he's lying because he told me. Then I think he's going to have a hard time winning that lawsuit.
Let's back up a second here, if we may. And by the way, I enjoyed the cat making an appearance on the podcast because we jumped a little bit ahead here. There was a little pre-show banter as we were in our various virtual green rooms. So we were texting back and forth. And I happen to remember, and I know Cofield probably has the tape, being as technically savvy as he is, or maybe Ari did, we have the exact verbiage queued up, but I remember the show going a little bit differently. I remember Mr. Watkins on his high horse shouting at the mountaintops, "They will lose every challenge on its face. You cannot challenge. There are decades of case law, if not every case has been denied. Every uh, books, the reporters are stacked. You cannot challenge and win successfully on these vaccine cases. There's no chance any of these guys are going to win anything." And I said, timeout. Let me be the voice of reason here. I shall say to you, sir, there, as employees and state employees, there will be processes. They will have challenges and processes and things they have to follow, administration regulations and this and that. So time out. This won't just be a slam dunk. And now all of a sudden, what are you talking about, sir? You're talking about their double blind processes and this and sincerely held, and there was a determination in HR and kick back to the supervisor, and they have evidence of this and if and that. So if you just want to say, Dan, you were right, and I think they're going to prevail, but you were right. Hey, I'm here. I'm listening. I'm ready to listen, dog. That's good.
I
That's all you
stand.
had to
I stand
say.
100. No. So I stand 100% by the position that challenging the enforceability of the law itself, not gonna. He's never gonna win that. And I said that, and I still say that. And I said the only thing I don't know about is the process. That's what I said.
Well, which I brought up. I said there's going to be a process. And in this case,
I had been on the radio earlier that day saying the same thing. Come on now.
well, and in this case, he's going to get paid too because they screw that up. You can't listen. I equate it to this.
Yeah.
You people may or may not be aware of, like for example, coaches and sexual assault things and things like that. There's a thing called being a mandatory reporter in education, things like that. It's you hear about it, you report it to the experts on campus because you're not qualified to deal with this, right? You report it, they make a finding, whatever, it gets dealt with. You know, we've dealt with it at the University of Colorado many times. So this process is in begging for a lawsuit because it's a double blind system. That sounds great. They make a determination and then their process is, well, let's kick it down to the unqualified people. And that's not even here. That's not even what happened for them to make a determination. They're supposed to make a determination. Well, let's see if we can make an accommodation. They already made a finding. Yes, his belief was sincere. He should get an exemption, but let's see if we can accommodate it. And now his supervisor now has this bias, or he told me this and that. Dude, this is going to go very poorly. They're going to have to pay. They're going to pay. This is not going to trial. They're going to pay. At some point, we're going to hear, well, undisclosed terms for the best interest of all the parties, blah, 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 under the rug, gone. Washington State screwed this up. They allowed their AD, probably going to get fired for this too at some point. Done. He screwed it up. They screwed it up. I'm not siding with Rolovich. I'm just saying a bunch of clowns, a blank show. I'll take my victory lap, I guess. I mean, I don't like to have to do this, But
you look really troubled by it. You look.
I shed a shining light for the underdog once again on this podcast, as I have to do sometimes. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think. I think Chung and the process do have some issues to obviously deal with, no doubt about it. But I would say that I don't know that they violated their own process when they.
No, it's a flawed process.
It's a flawed process. But I think it's okay to say, hey, we think that this. Number one, I don't know why they thought it was a bona fide religious exemption when he literally wrote on there, I'm Catholic and we don't believe in vaccinations, and they're like, okay, sounds good to me. Push it on through. We don't care that the Pope said it's okay. We don't care that the Pope is vaccinated. That's a sincerely held religious belief.
I'm assuming.
Go for it.
I'm assuming that he got some pretty good guidance on how to get around that. That it must have been more than that. I'm assuming.
Well, I mean, not by their own letter. Their own letter says he said it was a sincerely held belief of his Catholic faith. Like, okay, there's nothing there for that. But okay, whatever. But I think that there is an appropriate process to then say, okay, we've granted this exemption. Now go to the department specifically and say, this person is exempt from the mandate. Can the person still perform their job without being vaccinated? Because just because you're allowed to have an exemption doesn't mean that that exemption can be accommodated in every walk of life and job. I think in this job it could have been, right? He could have been masked up all the time. Okay, but I don't think it was wrong necessarily in the process for it to then go to Chung and say, this exemption has been granted. Can you accommodate the process? And he said yay or nay. But instead he goes, whoa, you granted the exemption for this dude? Like, he's a liar. Like, and we should all start with this. This is only one side of the story. This is what they wrote in their appeal. This was persuasive writing. We cannot establish this as fact yet. I don't know. They may have a very good response that says that's not what happened at all. What happened in the process of determining whether it was a sincerely held belief is we needed more information because it was suspect, because there is no dogma in the Catholic religion against this vaccination. And so we sought out information around the people he worked with to figure out if it was sincerely held. He said no, it wasn't. We took that and used it. That would be okay, I think, in a process. But so we got one side of the story. You can have a quarter victory lap at best.
I'll take it. A half. I'll take a half.
Okay, a half it is.
The fact we're even having this discussion at all is a victory lap for me, because that was the whole thing.
Half lap. A walking lap.
I know you guys have been paying attention to a lot of the coverage on the Kyle Rittenhouse trial and this judge. So, Dan, what was interesting that developed the last couple of days?
Well, he did. I mean, this is a grandstander, and I actually have not watched gavel to gavel coverage, but I tuned in today. I was at the office. The idea, so he says, I'm gonna have to rethink whether I'm gonna allow live coverage of jury trials. Are you kidding me? I mean, this guy loves it. Like, he has the guy picking his own, out of a lottery, a tumbler or whatever, like they used to do. Remember the newscast? You used to watch the news in the 80s for they would, have the little tumbler, they pick the balls to see if you had the winning numbers to the lotto. Like he had the defendant picking his own alternate jurors out of one of those things, and I mean, the grandstanding that this judge has done. I mean, this guy's something, man. I mean, it's just odd, weird, very, very odd, something to see. It's going to be very, very interesting. I was texting my friend who does a lot of analysis on Court TV, what he thought. I said, what's your gut tell you? He says he thinks either one or the other, not guilty or hung jury. Because and again, I haven't watched a ton of it. My sense, though, with the jury being out this long, would be probably a conviction of something lesser. Probably not getting the whole ball of wax, but they're probably not going to let him walk 100%. But maybe a hung jury. But I'm thinking they're going to want to hold him accountable in some way, but not want, because he's the babyface kid, and they believe in certain things out there that they want to hold him accountable, but not also ruin his life. So that's just kind of my gut on that. I mean, it's a fascinating thing, dichotomy. And then you got this kind of wacky judge in there that I know drives Watkins nuts, drives you nuts, Schofield. We talked about it the last time we were on a few weeks ago. So it's been fascinating to the extent that I've seen bits and pieces of it. Again, I haven't been able to watch, gavel to gavel coverage of it, but I mean, it's fascinating. Even today watching, he's like, I'm not even sure the rules on how much of this video they're allowed to watch, how many times they're allowed to watch it. So we'll go look up the procedure. Like, something I thought you would know, Your Honor. The judge, both basically an issue. The jury were like, hey, we'd like to watch this video. And so the attorneys from both sides were like, yeah, pretty much they can watch it as many times as they need to. The judge puts on this big show about, well, I kind of agree, but we're going to do this by the book, and I'm not sure what the procedure is.
Well, I
okay.
see. I thought the defense said no, they only want him to watch it to be able to watch it once, which I thought was an odd position, right? I mean, the jury can review the evidence. The video's in evidence. Like, where is there any evidentiary rules that say, well, no. Yes, it's in evidence, but you can only look at this evidence as much as you want, but not this evidence. No, you can't watch that as much as you want. And so I thought it was odd that the judge was going there.
Well, but by the time the little snippet, by the time I turned on the TV, the attorneys were agreeing, okay, they can, but then the judge is defaulting back to, well, I thought the rule was they can only watch it one time. And I'm like, well, they're both saying let them watch it. Like, let them watch it. I always default to, because this was a discussion we were having before, let them see it all. But then I've had the prosecutors go, Dan, I understand you want them to see all the evidence, but it's only going to be all
shame on
evidence.
you.
Yeah. And I said, well, why not? Why wouldn't you want to know? But that's the way these things go. They're quirky, and then the judge was like going on some rant about, well, you would, you would think back in the olden times, only the judge and the lawyer and the teacher were the smartest people in town. But no, that's not the way it is it? Like, what is this guy doing? Shut up. Mandate, run your trial. Here's what we call an overcooked ham.
The thing that's funny is I'd watched none of this. I was completely unaware of the Rittenhouse jury. I didn't even know what was going on. I was like completely flighty, Costa Rica. I'm on my vacation, just didn't even think about it. And I walked in today, and every lawyer in my office was in one of the offices, like watching this stuff on TV. And I'm like, oh, so it's like, this dude gonna get convicted? They're like, no, he's not gonna get. They just start barraging me with like all the things that had happened in the jury trial that was, different than like the headlines I had read at best as to what was going on. I was like, well, he killed 3 dudes, right? And like the first, or 2 people, and the other. And they were like, there's no way he's getting convicted. One of my partner had watched it like almost beginning to end. It always went on in his office. And one of the other ones had been really interested. And so before we, in between being on the radio today with Steve and getting home and getting on here, I was like, let me see how quickly I can sort of catch up. And I'm not all the way up, but I would say this. The second killing and the third shooting that didn't result in death are absolutely 100% dependent on whether or not the first shooting was justified. Because there is no dispute that the second and third person attacked or pointed a weapon directly at Rittenhouse. And so his self-defense is based on the fact that he did nothing wrong in the first one, because those two are saying, hey, we thought he was a killer, and he was a danger to everybody. So we thought we were fine in doing what one of them's passed away, but the witnesses associated with that, we thought he was a murderer, and so we were trying to protect everybody else. But that state of mind is not relevant if he is not a murderer. They don't get a right to defend themselves against somebody who is not a threat to them. So the question all becomes, was the Rosenbaum shooting justified or not? The first person he shot. And that's where we're dealing with the motion for mistrial that they tried to put on at the end of the day today, because it's based on this drone footage of the shooting. You can see it. The defense said, hey, they didn't give us the proper quality video, and it was cropped in time to what they were given. And so it's in essence hiding evidence. And so we think that there needs to be a mistrial. At first they said with prejudice. Their last position before the end of the day was there needs to be a mistrial without prejudice, which means that he can be tried again. And so I was really interested to hear what your take was on that, because to me, they got to come with more than that. The video wasn't as good of quality, and therefore I would have done this differently. And they didn't seem to connect the other thing. They just said we would have done this whole trial differently. You got how? And so that one's really interesting to me, because clearly the Rosenbaum's chasing Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse turns and fires when Rosenbaum's right on top of him. I just don't know why the hell Rosenbaum was chasing Rittenhouse. I guess the testimony is that Rosenbaum was, this is the prosecutor's own testimony, Rosenbaum was erratic and aggressive, and that Rittenhouse had put out a fire on the property, and Rosenbaum didn't like that and chased him. If that's the story, I'm sorry. I don't think any of the charges are going to go. But I didn't watch enough to know if that's the only option of the story.
Well, and the other thing is, yeah, I don't think the problem with it as well, we would have done anything different, is he already got his defense for Rosenbaum, I believe, is Rosenbaum had been taunting him, saying, hey, if I get you alone, I'm gonna effing kill you. And like, hey, I have a plan for you. Because he didn't like them being down there with whatever it was, with guns or whatever. And he had been targeting babyface, guy down there with his gun. And so this guy, had a legitimate fear and was like, oh my God, now this guy's coming at me. And that's why he had that fear. So that defense, that card already got played.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, and I've been parts of the one case that I was a part of with an appeal where they kind of disqualified a large part of our expert testimony. And during the appeal, they agreed with us and they said, yeah, we agree the judge erred and said they should not have disqualified your expert testimony, but the jury still had enough to find your guy not guilty and chose not to. Therefore, we're going to find it harmless. So I would say, kind of along the lines of what you're saying, Justin, like, yeah, this would be not so prejudicial. Like, you still got to make your point to the jury, and you knew during this trial, and they couldn't. You obviously can't go to the jury and go, they hid this evidence from us. There'll be a mistrial, also grounds for a mistrial. Now they could appeal based on, if they don't get their mistrial here, they're definitely going to appeal on it. But they're able to make this argument. They were able to make this argument whether they had that footage or not. So
what's your take on this? So what this judge said is, okay, I hear what you're saying on your motion to dismiss. I'm going to wait until the jury comes back with a verdict, and I'll decide whether or not to dismiss with prejudice or not. Because if they find them not guilty, then I don't need to make a ruling. He literally said that, and I'm like, what? It's either appropriate to dismiss with prejudice or not based on that violation. You can't Monday morning quarterback it after a verdict and come up with the ruling that fits you, right? That was but maybe that happens in criminal trials. Is that a normal thing?
Well, no. Judges believe that they're the wisest. I mean, some judges believe they're literally the smartest people on earth. Like, I did a trial one time. It was about sunlight going over these trees into a trailer, and she thought she was the smartest woman in the world because of the daylight saving times. And I'm like, Your Honor, that doesn't change the way the sun travels in the sky, the path of the sun.
No, it moved down an hour.
Yeah, I'm like, that doesn't change. It still rises in the east and sets in the west. It doesn't matter what time of day it is, whatever. But she thought she was just that she had the trump card on us there, and they really do. They think that, and so to them, to you and me, it's like, well, yeah, it looks like you kind of manipulated the result there. You should be making a ruling based on the proper law. And I thought about that earlier today too. But in his mind, he'll be like, well, in his mind, he's like, well, let me do I'll let the jury do its work. But one thing that happens in criminal jury trials is a judge will make a ruling that's appropriate, because even before you get to an appeal, a defense team will file a quick motion saying, hey, notwithstanding the verdict, we file a quick reconsideration, notwithstanding the verdict, because a judge can make a finding that no reasonable jury should have come to this conclusion, period. And so it's something similar here. He'll say, notwithstanding the verdict, this never should have, this should have happened. But I tend to agree. It never should have gotten to a jury if this evidence should have been, presented. Which reminds me, let's get to the Ruggs thing too before we get off here too, because that's something fascinating in Las Vegas that I don't quite understand, which I want to ask you guys about as well.
I'm just looking at Brady's comment, and the answer is yes. The jury can come back guilty, and then he can dismiss prejudice. Just like what Dan's saying, it can happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm guessing that the judge is going to say, I ran a good trial. I ran a good trial, and whatever. But
send in more of that Asian food.
The guy. I vaguely heard something about that. Yeah.
He just wanted the Asian food that they ordered to arrive soon. Was it coming on some boat from the harbor?
Ooh, well.
Right. Was it stuck in Long Beach?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, this is the state of Wisconsin. We've seen what happened with making a murderer and how difficult the appeal process is in a lot of places, but in Wisconsin, it seems like a freaking nightmare. So, what's going to happen down the road? They going to appeal this, or is this just blown that it's not even worth a try?
Well, if he loses, they're going to appeal. Absolutely, they're going to appeal.
Right. Or is it hopeless? Or is the whole thing hopeless? It's Wisconsin.
Well, appeals are always tough. I'm telling you, like I said, that case I was involved in, I just shaking my head. Like, they agreed. They're like, yes, they screwed up, but like they don't like to, because think about it, what it does, and I hate it. Like, but well, if we do it for you, then we have to do it for everybody. So they really don't like to overturn things on appeal for anybody. So if they can find a way to not overturn something, they're not going to overturn it, even though people are sitting in cages, rotting. So they don't want to, right? Like even in that other case, you sent, tonight about that execution, like the parole board is recommended 3-1 to not murder this, or not murder, but execute this guy. Like the state parole board, and the governor's like, I don't know, like that's just the way the legal system is, and it's heartbreaking, But but you always appeal, and sometimes you get surprised, and it's becoming, I think, it's getting a little more lax, because we're, like if we get to it, the shaman thing, with these federal, these sentences in the federal Capitol thing. Think about what would have happened 50 years ago if somebody would have stormed the Capitol. One, they probably all would have been shot, gunned down before they hit the goddamn steps. And arguing over 40 months versus 40 years may have been what we've been talking about. But so society is coming around a little bit more. But no, you appeal, and in this case, there are a lot of appealable things. There are a lot of appealable issues. You got this wacky judge, you got legitimate constitutional issues. There's all sorts of things in this case that, yes, I would say if he's convicted, I think, he probably gets, again, not being an expert in this case, it seems like the jury's struggling with some issues here, because there's no good guys in any of this, right? But I don't think they want to ruin this kid's life for the rest of his life, but they want some accountability here. But maybe he gets hit with something, but if he gets hit with something, yes, they appeal, definitely.
Not to get too far down the road on this case, but what do you think about the judge, with this high charge, national attention to it, not sequestering the jury and they're getting sent home each night? Does that strike you as odd or unsafe? I mean, I'm legitimately asking. I don't know. I mean, if I'm placing bets, I'm placing bets on not guilty. But again, I have not watched this thing wire to wire. I just
Right.
played
Now
catch up
remember,
today.
yeah, but again, remember the conversation we had
Yeah.
about, hey, you can't, how could you not call those guys victims?
Yeah.
You know, at the beginning of this thing. Well, now you know, right? Like that was, now you know why they weren't calling them, necessarily victims. Maybe they are victims. The people that were shot, maybe they are victims. But that was why they weren't being called victims for the purposes of this trial, inside of the trial, because it wasn't so cut and dry. Right now, we know a little bit more about what was going on. As far as the sequestering the jury, I would agree. Unusual, especially this is not a OJ trial that was going to go on for what did that go on for 9 months or a year or how long that went on. I mean, this was only going to be a 2 or 3 week trial. I would have expected a trial like this to, and I thought I wasn't paying close enough attention because I was working. I thought when he was talking about whether to show them the video or not, he was making the judge was making some sort of statement like, well, they're going to watch it anyway. Like, what? No, they shouldn't be. They should only be, you should be locking them in a room with no access to anything, and they shouldn't be going home and watching anything. Like, no, they shouldn't be. They should only be watching what they have access to, and that's what you are controlling. But yeah, again, it's
Going home and their significant others like, well, listen, I was watching CNN all day, and they said for sure that you guys got to convict them because otherwise there's going to be riots. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or I was watching Fox News today, and they said for sure you've got to acquit them, otherwise there's going to be riots. And then just overall safety of them, right? Like, I mean, I don't think it takes a genius to figure out, follow them out and follow them to their homes. I mean, we're in a this is a politically supercharged case that, based on my again, getting up to speed today, I'm going to say headlines do not equal courtroom evidence, but that's an evergreen statement. That's always the case because a large part of it is journalists don't understand the nuances of the legal process a lot of times, and the reporting is clunky when it's a high profile case and they aren't normal courthouse reporters. The normal courthouse reporters know what they're talking about, know how to provide the nuance, but I don't know about the rest of what's going on here. But
but even some of it was again depending on your sources or where it's coming from.
Sure.
Like I saw some that were like, man, the judge roasted that prosecutor. That prosecutor is a bumbling idiot and he's getting destroyed. And then others that were like, drawing out that Rittenhouse is saying, why'd you bring a weapon down there? And he gets caught in a trap. Like, well, I brought it down there in case I need to defend myself, but I never thought I'd have to defend myself. You didn't think you were gonna have to defend yourself, but you brought a assault rifle, So, oh, this guy, he got Rittenhouse never should have taken the stand because he got caught in these traps. So, two different reporters or whatever, or not necessarily one news sources, the same exact event. One painting the prosecutor to be a bumbling idiot, the other one saying Rittenhouse sounds like a fool. But I get most of it sounded like Rittenhouse did himself favors, which is usually not the case when you, as a defendant, testify. But he probably came across more sympathetic by taking the stand.
Last one tonight. I know there was a development that Dan wanted to talk about. I think we talked about this a little bit during the live show today on terrestrial on ESPN Las Vegas. But what do you think about what is happening lately in the Ruggs case?
Well, that was interesting on a couple things because it wasn't exactly what I said on the podcast, but it was, and it looks like a feeble, failed attempt. It's not gonna work. They're probably better off going with what I said to begin with. Like,
I agree.
Find a problem with the car.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I was going to bring that up on the air today because to remind everyone, you thought, hey, maybe that's what they'll shoot for. This car is defective. The RAV4 has an issue, and I did notice the fire department did say there was a certain area of the car that just kept going up, like that's the area they couldn't control. And I was like, well, that's kind of what Dan said, but instead, as Justin and I talked about, the firefighters en masse are being blamed. That they showed up and maybe didn't diagnose the situation correctly and didn't get to it quickly enough, according to eyewitnesses.
Well, they're claiming they have a witness of what I saw. They're claiming they have the defense is claiming they have a witness, but they're attacking what I said they would attack, which is, hey, she was alive. It was an unfortunate accident, but for now they've added other charges since we did that initial podcast. But that serious charge that was, DUI resulting in death, the crucial element for them to get that charge to stick would be that the death was his fault. And so they could attack that one by saying, hey, yes, even if I was, guilty of DUI, I wasn't the approximate cause of the death. Like, hey, we all got in the accident. The collision did not cause her death. She was alive. There was a, witness there, a good Samaritan trying to get her out. She was screaming. She was calling for help. And now what they're trying, and I was saying, hey, they're going to attack whatever they can. They have more information than I had at the time. Just that night, I was like, probably going to try and attack the car, saying, hey, it was a death trap, right? Something was wrong with that car. They just couldn't get her out, whether it was, they couldn't get her, the door wouldn't open, or the fuel tank for whatever reason exploded and, caused, to become a death trap, which, again, that might be the way they need to go. But the collision being as unfortunate it was not the cause of her death. It was some other factor after the collision, because she was alive and conscious, and her injuries that she died from were not the collision itself. It was something after the collision. Now, what we're learning now is they're saying, well, the firefighters showed up and waited 20 minutes to even try to put out the flames. And they're saying the firebrands are like, it wasn't survivable. So get off that. Now, interesting to me, from what I saw, which I want to ask Justin about, was they're in court saying, hey, we want this evidence, this discovery from the fire officials about when, what they did. We want their records, information, what they did, when they did it, yada, yada, yada. And the judge said something to the effect of, one, I don't like this, which is, one, that's not your job to tell you them what you do and do not like. I mean, he has a right to his defense. He has a right to all the evidence, period. It doesn't matter what the judge likes or doesn't like. That's not up to him. They have a job to turn it over. If they don't turn it over, they get sanctioned. And if they don't, ultimately the case, just like we're talking about in Rittenhouse, he walks. But I've never heard of this. He said, if you want that information, go get your own subpoena. I'm not giving you a court order. And I'm like, very odd, because the way it works here is, if I want a subpoena and I have a case that's open, civil or criminal, I just issue a subpoena, and I have the authority of the court. I have the backing of the court. Here, the court's saying, I'm not going to get, do it yourself. I'm not giving a court, like, what? Like, that's very odd to me.
I didn't see that report, but no, that's how it is here too. I mean, I issue a subpoena with the court's backing. The only thing that the process that's created is, before I serve a subpoena, I have to let you know that I'm going to serve a subpoena, and then if you have an objection to the subpoena, you can object, and then it's the burden shifts to me to go get the court intervention to prove that it is subpoenaable, that it is a proper subpoena to issue. And that's what happened in this case, but not in regards to the things you're talking about. The prosecutors let the defense know that they were going to issue a subpoena for the medical records of Ruggs and his girlfriend, and they objected and said, no, that's privileged information. I mean, obviously the BAC is going to come in. They're not going to be able to work their way around that, but I do think they have a really good basis to get out all of the rest. What injuries he got to his body are irrelevant to, their claim or their case against him as it pertains to the death of Tina Tator. And so I think they'll win part of it and they'll lose part of it. I hadn't heard anything about the records from the fire department, but that would seem to be really easy, right? Like, we were called at this time. I mean, it's not like they create reports while they're out there, right? They're just going to have the dispatch notes. Dispatched at this time, arrived at this time, left at this time. So, we talked on terrestrial radio today about, the difference between legal causation and, proximate causation and actual causation. And, that the causal chain is not broken for foreseeable, consequences of your actions. I think that this is all foreseeable. When you hit somebody at 156 miles an hour, whether the car is defective or the fire department doesn't respond timely, all foreseeable that may result in somebody's death. So I don't think and I think you agree that these aren't winning arguments, but they're intended on being leveraged, is my suspicion, to try to get better plea options available out there. You stir the pot, you create some confusion, make the prosecutors work a little bit, sweat a little bit, and maybe you get a better deal on the table.
Right. Well, the foreseeability on that, I mean, the argument would be it wasn't foreseeable that, so let's say the fuel tank, the RAV4 had a problem, a defect with the fuel tank. Well, it wasn't foreseeable that it had a problem with the fuel tank that was going to cause this issue that caused her death.
Right? Well, I mean, negligent actions of others and defects can be foreseeable. For instance, you and I get into a heated debate about Rolovich and Washington State. You punch me in the nose. I go to the hospital. The doctor commits malpractice and amputates my nose when he was supposed to reset it. In Nevada, medical malpractice as a result of an action is considered legally foreseeable, and you can be responsible for the damages associated with the amputation. That's
absurd.
That's the standard. That's the standard.
Absurd.
Well, so is the amputation of a nose, but I mean, I'm trying to make it as absurd of an argument as I can to illustrate the point that yes, some negligent acts, some defective products are considered continuing on the legal proximate causal chain,
right,
in the eyes of the law. But some are so drastically different that they become intervening acts themselves and reset the causal chain. And so I just don't know that this one's a resetting event.
I have no. I mean, again, we don't even know the information. They didn't even seem to gravitate towards it first. They're going after the firefighters first because they think they have a witness. And again, you don't even know if she succumbed to inhalation first or burned alive. I mean, it's hard to talk about, but I mean, we don't even know so much. But I mean, I think typically what happens in a fire of that intensity is, I think usually your lungs, you succumb to inhalation. Thankfully, first, you pass out, so you don't have to succumb, experience the torture of burning alive. Hopefully that's what happened to her, as morbid as that sounds. But so we don't even know, but they're doing everything they can. I mean, that's their job for that. But yeah, and what did they say? I mean, I think you had said, I mean, it's mandatory minimum 2 years, right? And you were talking to your buddies. You thought 6.
Yeah,
even
6
with
to
a plea.
15.
6 to
Yeah,
15
6 to
with a
15
plea
on a good plea is what they thought. 8 to 20 is the max.
Yeah, I mean that's I mean, talk about a career. I mean, because I was trying to think about. Remember, there was the guy from the Cowboys that drove through, going 100 something, drove through like a family on the interstate. That I don't know that he'll even get. I think I didn't get that bad.
No, Leon Lett, right?
No, not Leon Ladd. It was Dwayne Goodrich, or I don't remember the guy's name, but I don't think I think he did like 3 years or something like that.
Yeah, and who was the receiver for the Browns? He didn't do any jail time.
Yeah, Stallworth, I think you're talking
about.
But the Stallworth one, the Stallworth one really should not be talked about in the same breath. Stallworth had been out, yes, had been drinking, but it wasn't a DUI. The guy jumped out in front of his car on like a coastal highway, jumped out in front of the dude's car. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't his fault, really. Other than the fact that, yes, he had consumed some alcohol. He wasn't like sloshing all over the road. The dude just was trying to cross the road and just jumped out in front of his car. It was a terrible tragedy, that type of thing, to my recollection. Back in the
Right,
day.
but I think he was at like 0.08, almost he was just exactly on the number, which is why
Right, but but I mean
the
that
attention.
affects that. I can tell you as a defense attorney that's defended DUIs, a .08 is a number that was come up with back in the day. It affects different people differently.
Totally, yeah.
It creates that's just a number. It doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean some people are impaired at .08. Other people can pass roadsides no problem at .08. Doesn't
Sure.
necessarily mean that he was intoxicated. And in that case, that wasn't the reason that guy got hit.
Not causally related. The causal chain is broken there, right? Like if he was impaired, his impairment did not cause the death of this person. It was that person's decision to jump in front of the,
a
jump
car
out
going
for the
55 miles an hour, which I don't believe was speeding. He just jumped in front of the car.
Right. So that's a great example, a great distinction to make of like how the causal chain can be broken there. Death as a result of DUI requires, or the result of the causal connection between the DUI and the death. And so, Chesnov's, doing everything he can to create doubt there. I think Dan and I both agree he's not going to get that, win that, but it's about creating leverage and some doubt and some risk associated from the prosecution that you got something to talk about, some reason to get a better deal. Obviously first defense going to be helpful. The double the legal limit alcohol is not going to be helpful.
The first defense, in this case, it's not as helpful as normally it would be. I mean, somebody died and he was going so fast, and it was a horrific death. I mean, it'll help some, but I mean, in a non-probation eligible, conviction, it's not going to help that much. I mean, what happens is there's going to be a pre-sentence report and you get points, right? And so that'll help on the points scale, but dude's going to prison. He's not eligible for probation, so
right.
It's not going to help him that much. Steve, I want to hear about the shaman. I know we got to get out of here, but first off, I don't know if ever in my life I've seen Steve this quiet. Did the cat chill him out, or what?
No, you guys are on a roll.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to quickly answer Brady's. Can the Raiders be sued in civil court for the Ruggs incident at all? The only way that I think you can get there is if the events preceding that were company events. If they have a company outing at Topgolf and they were all serving drinks and the company didn't provide for safe passage home, that's different than when we talk about no dram shop liability. That's employer liability. That's vicarious liability for the acts of an employee. And then I would say yes. I don't think we have any indication whatsoever that is the case here. But
by the way, there was somebody had said there was an event after Topgolf. He must have gone somewhere after Topgolf, right? Too,
he did.
So,
I believe that's right. Yeah. So he went to a bar after that too. So you would need something like that for it to be some sort of corporate event. All right. Sorry, Steve. Go ahead.
Real quick. This shaman jackass, this QAnon shaman, got 41 months over the Capitol riot. They reached a plea deal. I guess the recommendation was 41 months to 51 months. He's already been in federal custody for 10 months. So, what do you make of this one, Dan?
Now, why would you call him a jackass? He's he's mentally ill. He's a vegan. He needs a special vegan diet. Well, jackass. He was just there. On a tour. Why, jackass? Is that called?
It was harsh. I apologize, shaman.
Shaman. His lawyer did call him shaman in his statement or whatever. Now the interesting thing is, generally, you're going to do 85 to 87% of that. So he's going to be there for 3 years. He's going to sit in prison. And federal prison, the federal prison he's going to be at, is not going to be I mean, they're generally, it's not going to be the toughest life in the world. It's not like the hard time. Remember the movie Office Space? It's not federal pound me in the, prison, but it's white collar resort type prison. It'll be a nice, it's not gonna be too bad, especially for a guy like him. I mean, guy's a loser. Like he's lived with his
Why?
mom or whatever.
Why is that? Why isn't he sent? Why isn't he treated Michael Vick style and sent to like Leavenworth?
I mean, I'm just guessing, just because he's a low risk, type guy. It's a short sentence. He'll also get a point scale. I just assuming. I don't know much about. I've never had a federal client, but I'm assuming that he'll get like a nice dormitory style, place where he'll get to cruise around on campus, and where probably where the fire festival guy is going or whatever. But I don't know. But yeah, and what's this guy's alternative anyway? I mean, this guy's a loser. Like his mom had to write letters to the judge about his diet. Like
he should be arguing for the 51 months. Give me the higher end.
Right. Three hots in a cot. But I thought about at the beginning of this, because imagine, I thought about it as if, all right, so if it was my daughter had gotten wrapped up and just went in with everybody, how much would I want her to get? Because I thought, honestly, I'd like, so if it was my daughter who has to go into college here in a few months, she also would, I thought to myself, I would want her to have a consequence, she whether it be a few months or whatever, even my own daughter, I think should have a consequence, which would be sad that she'd have to have something on a record, but maybe a deferred sentence for some of these, the lowest of the low. But I mean, this was an egregious stain. This is not for anybody that wants to wipe it away and say, oh, they were just strolling around for a tour, or they just got caught up. This is a sickening, despicable act, a blight on our nation's history. To storm the halls of our Capitol building, and I mean, what they were trying to do. Let's not pretend what they were trying to do, and what some of them were trying to do. Some people were just kind of caught up in it, but we know better. And I don't know the way I was raised. You don't do that stuff. And the way most of those people, the older ones, that were people that were our age and older, they knew better. And it used to be you got more than a few months for doing things like this. And for the one guy hit a cop, and he got the exact same sentence, actually 41 months. So I'm at least happy to see that they're getting held accountable, and they're going to do years in federal prison. They at least should get that. It'd be interesting to see that one guy, the guy from Arkansas, what he eventually gets. I think he'll probably get 5 to 7 years, something like that. I don't think he's been sentenced yet. Because the worst of the worst should be doing 6 to 7 to 8 to 10 years. They really, really should. And to be honest with you, it's a lot of them. There was, I think, one person, the young lady that got shot. It could have gone a lot worse. This was an attack on our nation's capital. It was an insurrection. People died. It's a despicable, deplorable stain. And we had people, certain lawmakers that day that denounced it, that now pretend like it didn't happen. It was no big deal. It's sad to me. And so I just hope we don't sweep it under the rug and pretend it didn't happen, because it did. And there was, the judge resisted the temptation to just to give the guy a slap on the wrist. His lawyers did their best. His defense lawyers tried to paint him, say, hey, it was nonviolent. There's a bias against the mentally ill just because his political beliefs, or he wore a hat and he looked funny, and they did their best to try and get him time served. They did their job, but the judge didn't buy it. This guy showed no remorse, and he got an appropriate sentence.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with everything you said. I will say, like, I have a acquaintance of mine who did serve federal time for a pyramid scheme fraud sort of thing when his youth. And so he had like 22 months that he served in federal prison. He was like, it was pretty nice. He's like, there were no walls, there was no gates, there was no fence. we'd like go out into these nice fields, and then there was this known thing. You could kind of walk back into like it was in North Carolina. You could kind of walk back in the woods, and the guards would have a bar set up. and
That's
they
the
would-
nice one, the Carolina
Yeah,
one. Yeah. I
yeah.
think they're named after like Wake Forest and like the different ones. They're named after the
Yeah.
campus, the colleges.
Yeah. So he was like, dude, it's pretty nice. Like they would go, and I was like, why did nobody ever try to run? He's like, no, well, God, no, you don't try to run, because then you're out of there. They'll never
Mhm.
let you back at that one. You'll go to a real prison, and that's
Right.
the last thing you want to do.
Well, it's funny because I was just watching a documentary. There was like this these kids were in college. They tried to steal these high end books, and they made a movie about it recently. And there was this library or something had these real high end books. It was just the dumbest thing. They just ran in there, knocked over the librarian, and just tried to run out with the books. And they dropped most of them, and they ended up doing like 2 or 3 years in this federal prison. And I don't really got the sense that they really minded their prison time all that much. And like one of the guys was like, "No, I'd do it all over again." Just I don't even think they cared that they went to prison that much. I'm like, God, and yeah, they had a movie. I don't remember the name of it, but yeah, a really popular movie now recently was made about it. And they're all wearing their sport coats now and doing interviews, and they're like, "Yeah, I went to prison." Like, oh, okay, I guess it's not that bad, federal prison. But like I said, the one thing about federal prison is generally you're doing 85%. You're not getting out early. Like, state prison, unless you have sentencing enhancers, depending on the state, you're doing a half, right? So, you get, if Henry Ruggs, in theory, now, again, he might have sentencing enhancers, but in theory, he gets sentenced to 6 years. He could be out in 3.5.
No,
Right,
not
okay.
here. The 6
Okay.
is mandatory 6. If you get sentenced 6 to 15, no less than 6, no more than 15. First eligible for parole after 6.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So he would do 6.
Because of that charge, or are you saying any criminal sentence?
No. So
Because of that charge.
Yeah, in that charge,
That charge. Okay, that's what I was talking about. Sentencing.
Mandatory
Yeah.
sentencing. Yep. So it's not a reduced. That is the guideline. 6 to 15, minimum 6, no more than 15. But you start getting eligible for parole hearings after 6.
Okay.
All right, guys, good job. Appreciate it. Last question for both. Well, one, Dan, when are you up next on The Fan in Denver?
I'm actually, because the Broncos are on a bye. I've been out a lot, so first show
Whoa.
I haven't been on in a while. But I'm on Saturday, Sunday, then the big Black Friday show. So people can listen to me while they're out there shopping.
Nice.
You don't want to miss that. And then,
I'll be right. You know what? On Black Friday, I'll be right around the corner from you. I'll be in Colorado Springs covering UNLV and Air Force, right there, real close.
Oh, outstanding! Watch the flyovers, and
Should be fun.
they let the Falcon fly around the stadium. It's
Are you serious?
Oh yeah. He just zips around in the crowd.
I'm not a big bird fan. Like,
as in you're not a Big Bird fan like Ted Cruz, or you're not a big fan of the birds?
Oh, I was going to say he's more of a Magic fan.
Oh yeah.
Magic guy.
Important question for Justin, because this shows how much how observant I am during the show. It's just about the show. What happened to the beard? What's going on here?
That was like 3 weeks ago, dude.
Oh, really? Well, I didn't see it before he went to. Since you've been in Costa Rica, I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, no, it was. You know what? There's 2 determining factors for getting rid of that beard. There were some real big fans of the beard. My wife was not one of them. That's one
kind of important. Yeah.
But the masks were not helpful with the beard. And then I finally had to go to court in person the other day and put on the full suit. And it was not quite comfortable in the tie and neck region, so took it off. But I'm growing it back.
Don't do that. That's a bad idea.
What, growing it back? That beard was money.
Yes.
The beard was great.
It was definitely not money. We can attest to that. I was uncomfortable with it every Wednesday when I had to face it here. By the way, I like Brady's like, Dan's not he's not in favor of consequences. Exhibit 1, the dog. we were talking about it before the show, and the pre-show meeting. I got the floors here. The floors have been ordered, Brady. They're sitting here. They have to acclimate in the house for 2 weeks. The wood floors, they have to like soak up the atmosphere of the house for 2 weeks.
Which includes the dog gnawing on them.
I hope not. He better not. Oh, he better not. I tell you,
Yeah.
he will cease to exist. These things are not cheap. I'll tell you that much. Especially, so they have to soak up the atmosphere of the house for 2 weeks. We have to like walk around the dang this pile of wood here in our house now for the next,
You're this is a good line by Brady. Your dog's going to acclimate those floors too.
Yeah, you better not. And the cats better not get any ideas either. They'll be sitting in Steve's lap. Yeah, they'll be sitting in Steve's lap. Yeah. Trust me, I'm sweating it. I'm like, please don't let the cats do that.
That's not good. They're little bastards.
Yes.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everybody. We're back tomorrow night with